Will Washington, D.C. tourism ever be the same? Hello, my name is Rob. I'm a tour guide and the founder of TripHacks DC Tours. On this channel, I share my best tips, tricks, and hacks for exploring Washington, D.C. And over at triphacksdc.com, you'll find info about tours and more. It was a little more than 1 year ago that Washington, D.C. started shutting down because of COVID. And it's wild to think that at first we thought it would be a 3-week pause and then a 2-month break. And now it looks like it's not going to be well into 2021 before things start to rebound. But back to the original question. Will Washington, D.C. tourism ever be the same? My short answer to this is no, but that's admittedly not a very satisfying answer. So I'm going to run through all the reasons why I think it's the case. And if you're thinking about traveling to Washington, D.C. in 2021 or beyond, what I need you to do is make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification icon so that you don't miss any future Washington, D.C. updates or travel videos. With that said, let's get started. COVID really crushed the travel and tourism industry in D.C. and frankly, in a lot of places around the world. In many ways, we're lucky because DC's tourism industry is resilient in the sense that we have a large number of federal sites, and those aren't going anywhere. So you don't have to worry about whether your favorite Smithsonian Museum or the National Archives or the monuments and memorials might go out of business. Now, of course, we have to address January 6th and the attack on our Capitol. The short-term implication is that the Capitol building was locked down. It was surrounded by a 3-mile perimeter fence and secured by the National Guard. And even 2 months later, this is still the case. The January 6th attack was horrific, and many of us fully understood the need to secure the Capitol for the inauguration. But building a permanent fence around the Capitol building is a terrible long-term idea. And I, along with many of my fellow tour guides and Washington, D.C. residents, want to see it come down. Regardless, what I think this means practically is that the Capitol Visitor Center will probably be one of the last federal sites to reopen, even as COVID restrictions are lifted. The Capitol Visitor Center already had one of the most intense and honestly frustrating security screening procedures in the entire city. And I don't know exactly how that changes going forward, but bottom line is that it's unlikely to be easier to access the Capitol after this, as sad as that is. Now, let's move on from the federal sites, because that's only one part of the DC travel experience. A lot of restaurants here have already closed and will not reopen post-COVID. Reading the list of restaurants that haven't made it is like reading an obituary, and it's really sad to see some of the places that haven't made it. For you, what this means is that as you're researching your trip, a lot of content that you find that was written pre-COVID is gonna be out of date, including some of my own videos, I'm not gonna lie. When it comes to hotels, 2021 is going to be a pivotal year. While many people think of Washington, D.C. as a tourism destination, it's really on business travel where a lot of hotels make a good chunk of their money. My hunch is that tourism will come back faster than business travel, especially conference travel. I know some conferences that pushed their 2020 event to 2021, and now are already saying they're pushing it again to 2022. So while there haven't been any major DC hotel closures yet, I wouldn't say that they're out of the clear either. In the meantime, I think the overall decline in business travel will be an opportunity for a little bit better rates than you might have found in the past. And what about small businesses in the travel industry, like TripHacks DC Tours? I feel like I should address this because I've had more than a few people contact me and ask, is TripHacks DC Tours even still in business? Which is a perfectly valid question. Our tour business was down 89% in 2020, which in any other year would have been a pretty clear indication that it's time to throw in the towel and close up shop. And it's not just TripHacks DC. A lot of similar tour companies are in the same boat. But so far, almost none of them have actually gone out of business. That's because, for better or worse, a small tour company like TripHacks DC is a lot less complex than a brick and mortar business like a restaurant. That said, every tour company that I know of has had to downsize, often significantly. So just because they're not completely out of business also doesn't mean they're doing okay. Not even close. But enough with the industry talk. Let's talk about what this means for you and your trip to DC in 2021 or later. We actually have a pretty decent preview of what reopening is going to look like, because DC tourism did return to a small degree last summer and fall. I actually recorded a great podcast episode with Walter's World during that time that I would recommend listening to. The key highlights are that advanced planning is going to be absolutely key. There's going to be a transitionary period where things reopen, but tickets and reservations are going to be required for nearly everything. Free museums will still be free, But if you show up without a ticket, you're not going to be able to go. Same goes for tours and activities, which will likely have fewer last-minute options and will require advance tickets. Metro will keep running, but service cuts have already been floated. There was an extremely scary story that was published last year, which said that because Metro has lost so much money because of COVID, worst case scenario, they might have to close 20 Metro stations and not run any trains on the weekends. Now, the federal COVID stimulus legislation will prevent this doomsday from happening, but it doesn't mean that there won't be any cuts. Another thing we learned from 2020 is that you're going to need to keep bringing your mask along when you travel. Indoor sites like museums are going to keep their mask requirements even when they reopen, and group activities like outdoor tours are going to have them too. I know this will be frustrating, especially because there's going to be a period where some people will have already gotten both doses of their vaccine, but other people will still be waiting their turn. So I really hope that everyone can travel with a little bit extra patience this year. And now, if you made it this far in the video, I want to know from you. What questions do you have about traveling to Washington, D.C. in 2021? Leave a comment down below. And if enough people have questions, I might even make a separate Q&A video. But in the meantime, I highly recommend another TripHacks DC video. So go ahead and click or tap right over here to watch the next one. And if you're coming to DC and want to sign up for a TripHacks DC guided tour, you can click or tap on the Capitol Dome on the left side of my head. That'll send you right over to triphacksdc.com, where you can see all of the tours that we offer. Enjoy your trip!